They were taller than trees, stronger than beasts, feared by the gods. Almost every ancient culture tells stories of giants, beings of immense size, unmatched power, and strange, almost divine origins. But here's the question: why do they all sound so familiar, if they were never real? In the Hebrew Bible, there are the Nephilim, the sons of God, who descended to earth and had children with human women. The result? Giants that walked the land before the Great Flood. In ancient Greek myths, there were the Titans, powerful beings who ruled the world before the Olympians overthrew them. In Norse mythology, the world began with Ymir, a massive frost giant whose body became the very fabric of creation. In Hindu texts, Rakshasas and Asuras towered over armies. In Aztec lore, Quinametsin giants helped build the original cities. Even Native American legends speak of giant red-haired cannibals that roamed the plains and were feared by all tribes. That's 6 continents, thousands of years apart, all describing the same thing. Could it be coincidence? Mass imagination? Or is there something deeper buried in the sands of time? Let's ask another question. If giants never existed, why are their stories so detailed? Why do ancient texts mention their height, bones, wars, and even bloodlines? Why do temples, tombs, and petroglyphs show beings towering over humans? Archaeological evidence, or at least the disappearing traces of it, suggests there may be more to these stories than mere legend. In the 1800s and early 1900s, local newspapers across the United States ran dozens of reports about giant skeletons being found, often measuring 7 to 12 feet tall. Farmers digging wells, miners hitting strange chambers, construction workers uncovering massive skulls. The bones were real. Photos were taken. Witnesses spoke out. But then something strange happened. The bones disappeared. Shipped to museums, never seen again. Reports stopped. Official statements were vague. It's as if someone hit the mute button on history. Still think it's just myth? Maybe the real question isn't, did giants exist? Maybe it's, who decided we weren't allowed to know they did? In a quiet Ohio field in 1895, a group of workers were digging out land for a new barn. What they found instead was a giant skull, nearly twice the size of a human's, with enormous teeth and a jaw that could fit over a man's face. The next day, it was gone. The local paper ran a brief headline: "No follow-up, no museum, no explanation." That wasn't an isolated case. From the late 1800s to the early 1900s, dozens of newspaper reports surfaced across the United States, all telling similar stories. In West Virginia, 1883, a burial mound yielded 7 skeletons, the tallest over 10 feet. In Wisconsin, 1912, the Smithsonian conducted excavations in Lake Delavan. 18 skeletons were unearthed, some over 9 feet tall, with elongated skulls and double rows of teeth. In Nevada, miners in Lovelock Cave discovered red-haired giant remains, mummified and surrounded by artifacts, exactly like the Paiute tribe had described in their legends. Photos were taken, measurements recorded, even respected researchers at the time documented these finds. And yet, they're nowhere to be found. Museums, silent. Government agencies, denial. Academic circles, mockery. How does an entire category of archaeological evidence just vanish? Some say it was incompetence. Early scientists didn't preserve bones properly. Others say it was coincidence. Maybe people exaggerated. But there's a third theory, and it's far more disturbing. These discoveries were buried on purpose. Why? Because if giants existed, it would rewrite our understanding of evolution. religion, ancient civilizations, even human identity. It would mean modern science missed something massive, literally. It would mean ancient texts weren't metaphorical. They were documenting reality, and that would threaten the control of those who define truth. So instead, the story became a joke. The bones became hoaxes. And the reports? They were quietly erased from history. But the people who found them? They never forgot what they saw. And neither should we. In 2014, a story broke that shook the world of alternative history. According to leaked documents and insider testimony, the Smithsonian Institution had allegedly destroyed thousands of giant skeletons in the early 1900s in a deliberate effort to protect the official version of history. The mainstream response? Silence. Let's rewind. Founded in 1846, the Smithsonian Institution quickly became the central authority on American archaeology. It controlled what was preserved, displayed, and published, and for over a century, it had full access to the tens of thousands of burial mounds scattered across North America. Inside those mounds, early reports described giant human skeletons, strange artifacts, copper weapons, and elongated skulls. Reports came in from farmers, explorers, even Smithsonian-funded expeditions themselves. So why don't we see any of it today? Here's what the conspiracy says. In 1902, the Smithsonian allegedly created an internal directive to collect and dispose of anomalous remains, bones, skulls, and artifacts that didn't fit the evolutionary timeline. This directive wasn't public. It was passed internally under the guise of preventing fraud and preserving scientific integrity. The most explosive accusation? In 2014, the American Institution of Alternative Archaeology, AIAA, claimed to have obtained documents proving that over 1,000 giant skeletons were destroyed. The AIAA even claimed a former Smithsonian curator confessed on record stating, "We were told to destroy them. Giants would ruin everything." The Smithsonian, of course, denied the story. They called it fake news, internet fantasy, and historical revisionism. But they never explained where the bones went. In fact, they admitted that many artifacts and remains were lost in poorly documented 19th century expeditions. Some even vanished in transit. Others were never seen again after excavation. So we're left with this: hundreds of eyewitness reports, dozens of newspaper clippings, government-funded digs, but no bones, no museum exhibits, no open records. Why? Because the existence of giants would tear down Darwinian evolution, shake major religions, and question who really built the ancient world. It would give too much power to too many unapproved questions. And the Smithsonian? It stands as the gatekeeper of historical truth, or perhaps the guardian of a well-crafted lie. It's a question that burns at the center of every suppressed discovery, every missing skeleton, every censored document. And to answer it, we need to look beyond bones and burial sites. We need to ask, what did the giants represent? In almost every ancient account, giants were not just big humans. They were different. Hybrids, born of gods and mortals, often described as possessing knowledge, building cities, wielding power, and in many cases, revolting against heaven. The Book of Enoch says the Nephilim taught forbidden knowledge, metallurgy, sorcery, astrology, and caused chaos. Greek mythology describes the Titans as godlike beings who had to be overthrown. Many native traditions warn that the ancient giants abused their power, even ate humans, and had to be destroyed by floods or fire. Now think about it. If giants were real and they once ruled, built, or influenced early civilizations, then modern humanity, as we know it, isn't the peak of history. We're what's left, and that is a threat. A threat to science, which builds its authority on linear evolution. A threat to religion, which defines the origin and hierarchy of creation. A threat to governments, which need a unified historical narrative to keep society stable. Because giants don't just question our past, they challenge the idea of control. Control over knowledge, control over history, control over belief. If the world found out that giants once walked among us with intellect, technology, and perhaps even celestial origins, how many people would begin to question everything? What else have they hidden? Who are we really? What was erased along with them? Suddenly, the entire system becomes fragile. So instead, we were told they were myths. Their names became fairy tales, their images fantasy creatures, their cities lost, their bones missing. And over generations, the truth didn't just fade. It was replaced. But the ground still remembers. The stories still whisper. And the silence of the institutions? That's the loudest answer of all. They took the bones. But the giants left something behind. Not in museums, not in textbooks, but in the symbols, the architecture, the rituals that survived long after their bones were removed from the ground. Across ancient sites, Egypt, Mesopotamia, South America, Turkey, we find the same repeating motifs. Gigantic doorways that no human could enter without climbing carvings of towering beings beside small humans. Spiral staircases that descend into underground chambers said to hold the secrets of the Watchers, and massive stone thrones clearly made for beings far larger than us. These weren't accidents. These weren't metaphors. They were memories carved into stone, encoded into geometry. Let's talk symbols. The spiral, often associated with energy, DNA, and cosmic rebirth, appears in nearly every culture. The eye within a triangle, seen in ancient temples, Freemasonry, even modern currency, speaks of hidden watchers, observers beyond time. The staff, the cube, the tree of life, all trace back to one thing: forbidden knowledge. Some researchers believe that long after the giants vanished, secret societies carried on their legacy, not genetically, but intellectually. They preserved blueprints, rituals, and philosophies in code. Where? In cathedrals, in Masonic temples, in the very design of some cities and monuments, even in modern science and mathematics. Where certain ratios, like the golden mean, echo ancient giant architecture. But why hide it? Because knowing that giants walked among us and that their knowledge shaped the early world would shatter the illusion of modern dominance. It would prove that our history isn't a straight line, but a broken cycle. That we've been here before. That maybe we've been reset more than once. And the symbols? They're not decorations. They're reminders. Not for everyone. Only for those still watching. So the bones may be gone. The museums may be empty. But the truth? It was never buried. It was hidden in plain sight. And now, you've seen it.